Thursday, March 6th. Will you please join me for the flag salute? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Good afternoon, Chair. We'll go ahead and get started around the board. Mr. Cole?
Present.
Ms. Miller?
Here.
Ms. Trent?
Here.
Ms. Campbell?
Here.
Sheriff Hansel?
Here.
Chief Pate?
Here.
Mr. Feuerbend?
Here.
Ms. Long?
Here.
Ms. Titus?
Here.
And Mr. Dawson. Thank you. All right, and if it's all right with you, Chair, through the chair, I do want to take a second to introduce Mr. Dawson. This is Mr. Dawson's first meeting as part of the Measure Z Advisory Committee. He was recently appointed on last Tuesday by the board to serve as the alternate seat on our committee. So, Mr. Dawson, again, through the chair, if you would like to take a second to introduce yourself, and then we'll go ahead and get going with the next rest of the meeting.
Just want to say thank you for the invite, and glad to be here and be a part of the Measure Z Committee.
You need to talk into the microphone so they can hear you on TV.
I thought that was going to be loud enough. I just want to say thank you for the invite, and I'm glad to be part of the Measure Z Citizens Advisory Committee, and look forward to helping and serving.
Thank you. Are there any modifications to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Approval of the February 27th action summary.
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll make a motion to approve the attached minutes and rankings. I'll second.
Do we have to do roll call or just, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, action passes. Public comment on non-agenda items. Anybody would like to make a comment on anything that's not on the agenda today? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. County administrative office updates.
I don't really have anything today, Chair. I think we can get going on to the rankings.
Okay. Discussion items, evaluate and rank applications.
All right, so thank you, Chair. The one thing that I do want to mention, and this is, I sent you all an email, printed out copies. There are copies here in person on the materials that I sent you all, but we did receive some communication this week from a couple applicants. The Bear River Casino, Bear River Band of the Runnerville Rancheria asked to revise their application. As you know, they submitted an application for OES staffing and dispatch, two separate applications. At our last meeting, they said that they would prefer to have the dispatch application considered. They've since made a request to the advisory committee to reverse that decision and eliminate the dispatch application from consideration and instead consider the OES application at a new level. So that is, before we get going into the evaluation process, last week your committee approved the new application sheet, so everything that would be under consideration at today's meeting. If this committee would like to entertain the request to make that change, then there would need to be a motion and a second and a passed motion to make that change. And I've prepared my spreadsheet to that effect. One other note that is a technical correction to make. I had an amount slightly off on the Rio Del application piece that is in your spreadsheet. I believe your spreadsheet notes $116,115. It should read $116,156. So minor correction there. That's all I have for you, Chair.
Okay, does anybody have any questions, or do you want to change or modify or leave it as is?
Sean, can you clarify that action needed regarding the reduction of that application?
Yeah, so we are talking about applications number 5 and number 7. So coming out of last meeting, the Rancheria decided to rescind application number 5 from consideration and move forward with number 7. They've since emailed and said, no, let's please consider number 5 at a new amount at $100,000, $100,408, I believe is the new amount. And they wanted to rescind the dispatch application.
And so for us to review, or to view those applications at those amounts, it requires a motion and a passage?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I would so move.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none? Okay, can you please change those?
Yep.
Okay, so are we ready to start ranking, or is there anything we need to do before that? Well, yeah. Well, actually, I guess we don't start ranking, we do public comment on all of that. So, is that where we
Chair,
start?
yeah, Chair, we should, before we take that vote, we should go out to public
Yes.
comment on that motion. Apologize.
Okay, so anyone that would like to talk about the project, please come on up to the mic.
Sorry, point of order, Sean. You were talking about the previous motion. You wanted public comment on that prior to?
Yes, that's
Oh.
correct. Before we can vote on the motion that you just took to change the applications that we're going to consider, we need to go out to public comment there.
Oh, okay. So is there anybody that has a public comment on changing the application?
I believe that there was somebody on Zoom that had their hand up for a second.
Their hand is down.
Okay,
Okay. Okay, now we move on?
yes.
Okay, now public
Thank you.
comment on if you have an application that we're going to be ranking today and you want to make a comment on it, please come up to the mic.
Good afternoon. Lieutenant Matthew Eberhardt, on here on behalf of the City of Fortuna and the Fortuna Police Department. Chief Day was unable to make it today. He sends his apologies. He's out of the area. Before submitting our request, we reached out to our partners in the school districts asking if they supported the position of SRO. In response, we received, in the short time frame, 7 letters of support, which have been submitted with our requests, and I have here today. The SRO serves the Eel River Valley year-round, so that's 12 months out of the year. During the summer months, they continue their role through community policing, patrolling neighborhoods, parks, and other areas where youth gather. The reality is that just because school's out, it doesn't mean that youth are not at risk. The Eel River Valley is known for its large summer events, which attract youth and families. The SRO participates in summer programs. The SRO for the Eel River Valley serves 15 schools. 15 schools is a lot. We understand that you're facing difficult funding decisions here. However, when you break down the cost of this request and the investment, it's really clear. The amount of our request divided by 12 months for 1 year with the 15 schools, the investment comes out to just over $1,000 a month for each one of those schools. If you looked at that deeper and you take the number of students that the SRO serves, it breaks down to about $4.50 to $5 a month per student. Of course, this investment extends well beyond the students themselves. The SRO provides educational presentations, counsels students on behavioral issues such as bullying and truancy, The SRO investigates crimes and works with the city and school staff on securing security plans and strategies. The SRO is more than just an officer. They're a liaison, a mentor, a role model, a valuable resource. Their presence makes a measurable positive difference. To illustrate this, I'd like to share a recent example. Not all incidents related to public safety are made public. Within the past couple of months, a local school received a threat of a shooting via social media. The SRO responded immediately after hours, collaborating with school staff and investigators. Working through the night, they identified the juvenile. They apprehended the juvenile living in a county, neighboring county, and they thwarted that threat prior to school starting the next day. And with that, the situation was resolved swiftly. The attention was shown to this, and we did not give it media attention because we wanted to thwart any possible copycat situations. We deeply appreciate your continued support. We thank you for the time and consideration, and we ask that you prioritize our request.
Thank you, Matt,
Thank you.
or Sergeant. I mean Lieutenant.
That's okay.
That's right. Yes.
Quick promotions there.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. Brian Stevens, Chief of Police, City of Eureka. Eureka is considered a small town, a Victorian village, but we experience big city problems surrounding crime, homelessness, addiction, mental health, and other social behaviors that create dangerous encounters for the community and for my officers. Some of these encounters, we find ourselves responding to involve individuals armed with weapons or have weapons accessible to them, which creates a more significant level of danger to our community and officers. It is the goal of the Eureka Police Department to implement progressive programs and approaches to individuals in crisis and utilize various de-escalation strategies to resolve them. This often requires us to be close enough to engage with the individual and thus placing our personnel in harm's way. EPD is seeking to utilize one-time Measure Z funding to purchase enhanced safety equipment to increase the safety of our patrol and special teams units. The equipment we are seeking to purchase is ballistic blankets, breaching kits, and ballistic shields. The shields and blankets provide our officers with effective cover to operate. This gives us more time to utilize de-escalation techniques to resolve issues. They also physically protect officers from firearm rounds or other weapons being used against them. These purchases would allow us to expand our inventory and provide the safety equipment where it's needed and when it's needed. Over the life of Measure Z, EPD has been fortunate enough to receive funds to foster many of our programs. We began with the MIST program in conjunction with the county, expanded our CSET team, added a park and waterfront ranger, and mental health clinicians. We were not awarded monies during our last application, and this is the first time we've submitted a request since then. Of all the funds we have received from Measure Z, we were fiscally responsible for them, conducted timely reporting, and found additional funds to support and supplement our programs. Of all the personnel costs we always requested, we never funded any position fully. We always accepted probably 50% of that funding request as a part of the department, always took that on. Since our last funding, the City of Eureka has found creative ways to absorb all the positions that we had funded by Measure Z and to even expand our programs, which now sets an example for all to work to emulate and address our current issues. Like others in this room, we understand how tough your decisions are, and I do not envy the committee and the decisions you have to make. But I would, this is a one-time purchase for safety equipment to protect EPD personnel, and I would appreciate your support and for our request. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Got a question, Chief.
Yes, sir.
When it comes to mutual aid, how often do you think that Eureka Police Department responds to the county, to California Highway Patrol, even the other jurisdictions, the other cities, in a year? You know, and with this equipment, would that be able to be responsive to some of those mutual aid requests in the county?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, on average, probably 6 times per year, and most of those would be the sheriff's jurisdiction, closely outlying areas that either your agency is busy with, other calls for service and we have to respond to help, or major incidents where we're responding to assist, and vice versa. We get mutual aid that comes into the city with the countywide SWAT team, and a lot of these incidents, we're responsible for holding those perimeters, conducting those investigations up to a point to where the matrix is met to call in that special teams with all the special equipment. So this type of equipment, again, allows us that protection to be close enough to those calls, handle those calls as much as we can, not having to rely on mutual aid until we need to pull that big red handle and keep our officers safe.
just to follow up, this isn't siloed equipment. This is equipment that can be essentially taken anywhere in the county to assist in mutual aid situations if it's necessary.
Absolutely, sir.
Awesome, thank you.
I have a question too.
Yes.
So this is potentially life-saving equipment also.
Absolutely. It's as important as the ballistic vest we wear on our bodies, and probably even more important in that we can de-escalate and resolve situations without using lethal force if we have the ability to use the time and tactics that we've been trained to use to try to resolve them. And this allows us to get close enough. We've used ballistic blankets probably 4 or 5 times a year in barricaded subjects, mental health situations where people are in crisis with weapons, where we can actually put our negotiators in the front seat of a patrol car, throw the blanket over the windshield of the patrol car, and create a safe environment for them to operate, make phone calls, negotiate over a loudspeaker. And that's just imperative to the safety of everyone involved, including the person that's in crisis, including the suspect that's barricaded, because the last thing we want to do is create a circumstance. In fact, we're required by law, try not to create a circumstance where we have to use lethal force. So we have to use de-escalation techniques, and this equipment gives us that opportunity to do that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Good afternoon, committee. Thank you for having me. Chief Josh Finney, Reedale Police Department. I handed out a pass out to you guys earlier regarding my community service officer request and a lot of the duties and tasks that they are allowed to do and can be trained to do. We are asking for a CSO position to be fully funded by Measure E. We cut our request down by 52% from the additional officer position that we also wanted, for a total of $116,000 and change. We're 6 full-time officers and a part-time records clerk currently, serving a population of roughly 3,300. And what this forces us to do is be mostly reactive as a department. For example, a lot of the tasks that could be done by a CSO are having to be done by an officer. A lot of record stuff, a lot of mandated state reporting that could be freed up, that could be assigned to a CSO, freeing up valuable officer time to be more proactive in going after issues in the community. CSOs also take a huge role in our code enforcement. Reedale is plagued by houses falling apart, businesses that need to be remodeled, cars that are just left on the street. And so our abatement program is pretty robust. However, it's purely reactive at this time. Having a second CSO employed would allow the officer to start, or the office to actually start taking back these streets and improving the overall look of Reedale and the quality of life for our citizens. As an agency during 2024, my officers responded to roughly 2,918 calls for service, and out of those, 5% or 147 of those were outside assists to other jurisdictions such as Ferndale, Fortuna, and Sheriff's Office, such as Scotia, helping officers with calls, being the first units on scene, assisting with warrants and special operations. So having a CSO to take on more responsibilities will free up my officers to be able to assist other agencies, not just our own as well. I greatly appreciate your consideration in approving funding for my agency.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Yes, Chief.
So thank you for coming up. Anybody that's going to come and speak, I know just how hard it is to be on the outside of the podium from last year. My question is do you guys have a plan B if there isn't Measure Z funding next year? Looking at the long-term outlook, we never really expect to have much more funding. So
Yes, that was part of my conversations with the city manager right from the start before we even submitted this request, was coming up with alternative funding sources, and that's already in the works. Finance is already looking at dedicating funding to supplement this or take it over next fiscal year.
awesome. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Is there anybody else that would like to?
There is somebody on Zoom also, Chair.
Okay, we have.
All right, well, hello. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Tanner Spies. I'm the Chief of Telegraph Ridge Volunteer Fire Department in Edwardsburg. I'm also on the Southern Humboldt Fire Chiefs Association. I'm the Secretary and Treasurer. And I just wanted to speak about the Humboldt County Fire Chiefs Association application. I joined the fire department years ago, 18 years ago, after I had my family in Edwardsburg, and I've responded to many calls in the Edwardsburg area. Most of them are traumatic and very difficult for the people calling. We go to 911 calls. They're usually because people are afraid, sometimes for their lives, and oftentimes, like sometimes it actually does result in deaths. So they're very serious scenarios. In 2023, all of the Humboldt County fire services agencies responded to over 18,000 of these calls, 911 calls, from all over Humboldt County that are calling for help, directly calling for help. And the volunteers and professionals who make up all the agencies of the Chiefs Association responded to those calls, sometimes at the danger to themselves, all risk calls, fires, and did the best they could to bring the residents of Humboldt County whatever safety and resolve they could to those. So a lot of these calls, as you know, are responded to by volunteers. And these volunteers don't go to those calls because they want to, right? They go to those calls because they feel that civic need, the duty to go to those calls. And oftentimes in places all over Humboldt County, there isn't really anybody else coming right away, sometimes up to 45 minutes. And oftentimes these volunteers are responding to people that they know. These are their community members. And they're trying to do it the best they can with the skills they can, but they also need equipment, especially for technical calls, fires and rescues, things like that. So as we do these applications year after year through the Humboldt County Fire Chiefs Association, you've heard many times about the funding issues, the challenges and needs that are identified. And amongst these challenges, obviously, the funding for the equipment is really important. We just want to emphasize that we're not doing this out of just asking for more money. This is coming yearly. You can see the statistics year after year that in Humboldt County, over 100,000 hours of volunteer time at a value of over $4 million per year is being put to match at the funding that we're requesting. So, you know, that's an important part of our community coming together, the fire agency coming together to show the value that's already there and asking for the help of the county. I know that a lot of residents don't understand the fact that the county isn't really responsible for fire and emergency services. But at the same time, I think they do see that as an essential service. When they call 911, that they're going to get emergency responders. There are skilled emergency responders with quality equipment.
I'm going to have to cut you off. Your 3 minutes are
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry,
Thank
but
you
I
for your
do want to
consideration.
say, I do have a thing. The majority of the fire departments in Humboldt County, I believe, are almost all volunteers. Is this true?
Yes.
Okay, and I do want to thank all those volunteers because volunteers are getting harder and harder to get. And what you guys do is a very important job, and you do need the equipment that you need to keep you safe. So thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions? Do you have? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. I'm Luke Brownfield, Public Defender. Our request is for one misdemeanor attorney in the main office. Currently, the main office has 2 misdemeanor attorneys that work full-time. Each one last year handled about 1,100 cases and get approximately 100 new cases each month. That's not enough time to meet with your clients, not enough time to go see them in jail, not enough time to write motions. It's really probably not even enough time to read all of the cases. So what we are asking for is one more misdemeanor attorney to kind of lighten the load on those 2 attorneys. The recommended amount of cases for a misdemeanor attorney per year, the max, is 150. Right now we're at 8 times or more than that. So this won't alleviate all of the issues, but it'll help make things a little easier for the 2 that we got. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Luke, for being here. This is a huge issue, isn't it, when it comes to bogging down in the court cases when an attorney isn't ready? Isn't it true that the case gets kicked down the road, or the justice system slows down and bogs everything down in courts? Correct?
Exactly.
So this will help speed things up in courts if you have another public defender?
It would help speed things up. It'll have less officers sitting there waiting for a prelim or something to start and just be told, come back in another
Right.
2 weeks when we've had a chance to actually meet with our client or whatever. So yeah, it just bogs down the system. Right now, the courts are so impacted, it's completely insane, but.
Right. And I just want to agree for people that don't fully understand that this is a huge issue with our Superior Court and law enforcement, DA's office, public defender. We can all agree there needs to be more attorneys handling this because, again, we waste a lot of time every day trying to get these cases through. So I do agree, and I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Joe Tagliabashi, City Manager of City of Trinidad. Our request is for a bit of help with our water system. This funds will help us replace and repair badly needed equipment at the water treatment plant. We did have a fairly large capital reserve fund. Unfortunately, due to some personnel and staffing issues, we've used that fund to help pay for the chief plant officer to operate the plant in the interim before we were able to hire a CPO, which we're still looking for. We have had a rate increase in November, and the city council also gifted $300,000 to the water plant to help supplement those funds. We're appreciative of any funds that the committee would consider giving us. It would sure would help, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Hi, thanks for coming. You're part of the West Haven Community Services District, right?
No, we're.
Oh, you're not? You're your own?
We're our own water system, yes, ma'am. We serve 425.
And is it a community services district?
It's a city water
Okay.
treatment plant and
Okay,
system.
because for most people, that would be seen as a public works kind of issue. You know, that we had a person on our committee for several years, and he retired, but he was on the Community Services District for Garberville, and they asked us for a very similar, request. And he was the one that spoke up and said, people that have those problems have to raise their fees from the people receiving the water.
And we have done that.
Yeah, and so taking these dollars specifically for one town for their water system, just, to me, it doesn't feel like that's, appropriate use of our money.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, and I don't think we've requested Measure Z funds prior to this, and
Right.
and this would be a one-time request. Our rate structure should support this system going forward. As I said, with our staffing issues and the need to pay a consultant an awful lot of money, we've depleted those funds. So
Right.
this would greatly help, and any funds that you would consider gifting us would be
Great.
much appreciated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Do we have
Chair
some on
Trent,
Zoom?
I do have someone on Zoom. Amanda?
Hi, good afternoon. Amanda Gonzalez with the Bear River Band of the Ronerville Rancheria. I'm talking about our request for funding to staff for salaries for the OES staff.
Amanda? I'm so sorry, Amanda. Could you start over?
How are we, can you hear me?
Yes.
There we go. Okay, sorry about that. Amanda Gonzalez with the Bear River Band of the Ronerville Rancheria. We are a smaller department. We just started a few years ago, so we are still establishing that, but this funding will help us cover a gap. We will be running out of funding in August on our current application, and so this will help us get through that. I understand we are outside the tsunami zone, but we do provide shelter for a lot of the people in the low-lying areas. And this is brought to light when we have evacuations during the tsunami warnings, and also we housed quite a few Humboldt residents last year during the atmospheric river. Over the next 3 to 5 years, our plan is to establish an emergency operations center and a resilience hub that would further diversify our funding by creating the ability to have agreements for use of the facility services. And we greatly appreciate your time and consideration for the application.
Does anybody have any questions? I actually have one. I know at one time Bear River has collected taxes that go into the Measure Z fund. Are they still collecting taxes for this?
I'm not sure. I can't personally speak on the taxes. That would be more of the tribal administrator's privy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have any other ones on Zoom? No? Oh, we have one more here.
Can I just ask questions? Sean, do you know the answer to that question? Do Bear River, do they pay sales tax?
The sales tax is a little bit tricky because of the confidential nature of sales taxes. It's when we get down to individual vendors or merchants, if there's identifying information, we can't get that out. What I will say is that when it comes to tribal entities, their shops and their gas stations, and those are not mandatory.
Gotcha, they're exempt from paying state taxes.
Yes, I will say that there are certainly some of those entities that do collect sales tax on behalf of local jurisdictions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Shannon O'Neill, and I'm a local licensed clinical social worker who also has the additional 2 years of addiction studies. So my program, I feel like I was so nervous last week. I had no idea what this process looked like, and super unprepared, even in the application piece where I thought that I was also submitting my program design. Total panic at the end. So you guys have no idea what I'm talking about. And so I'd like to real quickly tell you that it's going to be ongoing 2 groups, right? There's the fire and the police. It's set up so it's preventative, so you can come to keep your wellness and resiliency skills in check, right? Like, and also if something's going on, there'll be a spot ongoing where you can say, all right, well, why don't you go to group this week, right? It's a big piece that I forgot to tell you guys last time is a big component is that I'm going to be bringing in local experts. I've been here for 6 generations, so I've got really strong relationships in the community, really strong relationships with Cal Poly Humboldt, just brilliant clinicians and trauma experts, and also with horses. So I am contracting with my friend Holly Scaglione, who is she used to be on the cast team, and she was an instructor at HSU and an incredible, beautiful human who we will be contracting with because working with horses is really expensive. With this group, we're going to be able to have more resources in one spot. So it's not like, okay, one-on-one therapy is over here and groups over here and then horses are over here. I'm trying to bring it all together, make it more affordable because we're a rural community. We don't have a lot of resources, a lot of support. So in the beginning, I'm just hoping that we can bring that together. And at the same time, with my relationship with Cal Poly Humboldt, when I'm noticing, I've been in the field for 12 years, working in the jail for 2 years, with people who are incarcerated and learning how to be a clinician. Like, all of my clinical work has been like deep trauma, addiction, high profile cases from the get. I've been working with people out of prison, going into prison, and with first responders too. I'm on a couple critical incident teams and getting extra training, and was able to get 7 letters of recommendation within 24 hours, which that alone to me is a win here today, because that's what I'm looking for, is to see who's willing to give me a shot, give me a try. I know I'm new here, and I'm a student and a learner, and forever will be. I'm not a first responder, but I've done hundreds of hours hundreds of hours writing this program,
Thank
talking
you.
to everybody.
I'm going to
Yes.
have to cut you off
Yeah,
now. It's
no,
our 3
appreciate it.
minutes, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, Chair, Brandon Board. My name is Seth Ayers. I'm a Redway Fire Chief. I'm up here today just to talk a little bit what we're talking about. The Measure S, we were kind of the face of this ballot, and I feel like also with the Measure O. From what I understand, there's about $400,000 left over from the Measure O. I would like the board to consider rolling that over to the other side, per se, for these projects to get funded. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments
Chair,
on,
Chair Trent, we do have a caller on Zoom.
okay?
Maya?
Hi, can you guys all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Maya Bissell, and I'm speaking on behalf of Wild Souls Ranch. And as we have heard from the local police and fire departments, our first responders work hard to keep our communities safe. Given the severity of the matters that our first responders deal with and the number of dangerous encounters that our first responders must handle, the need for mental health support is huge. To de-escalate, manage, and mitigate crises, individuals in this line of work must have an understanding of mental health and the capacity to meet the need in the moment. Processing the skills is the first step, but having the mental and emotional capacity to utilize the specialized skill training that they have received in practice is just as important. As a nonprofit that provides therapeutic equine sessions, we can offer first responders an alternative to talk therapy to support them through the difficulties that they may endure while on the job. While working with us at Wild Souls Ranch, we can help first responders process past encounters and issues and build the capacity to meet future encounters and crises as they are sure to come up. We ask for Measure Z funding to support our first responder pilot program. Our application would provide 50 first responders with 6 equine sessions, totaling up to 300 sessions. We have the flexibility to travel throughout the county and serve all districts. This funding would provide first responders with access to mental health support and processing after stressful incidents and recognize the potential for trauma and provide resources for coping. We have already seen successes in this program with our local police department and look forward to serving more individuals. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
I wanted to, Matt left before we asked him questions, but I just wanted to, I'm not going to ask you a question, but I just want to note that their application is the only youth-targeted application that we have this year. And I feel strongly that we need to serve the entire county from 0 to 100 or 115 or however old you get to be and still get Social Security. Anyway, so I really feel strongly about SROs because they are sort of the dam, you know, between what goes on with youth and the rest of the community. And I feel real strongly that that they do a good job. Fortuna has a lot of experience. They've had many, Matt was an SRO, they've had generations of SROs. So for me, I think that's a really important program, and I just want to acknowledge that. Thanks.
Hi, Rick Nicholson, Humboldt County Fire Chiefs. I would respectfully disagree, Ginger. We also serve the youth of the county with the fire service all through the county. Our application reflects countywide from Orleans to Shelter Cove, from Palo Verde to Oric. So we service everybody. We're not asking for salaries. We've campaigned for Z, we campaigned for O. This is bare minimum operating that we do. There's always a cost share on this. None of this is 100% free to any of the departments. So like on the apparatus, it doesn't even cover the full cost. There's cost share that the departments have to kick in for. So like I said, I would respectfully disagree. We also serve the whole county and the youth. So thank you.
Hey, Rick, I think what she was getting at was that there was like preventative programs and those kind of things. Does the fire district do?
We do that.
preventative?
October is Fire Prevention Month. A lot of us go to schools. We go to I think almost every department goes to their local elementary school in October. I know Ferndale does. We also do the high schools. Humboldt Bay puts on open houses to the community. So there's a lot of community outreach there. I know Redway does their barbecue, which is also a fundraiser, but they have youth activities too. So I didn't take it as a hit piece, so to speak, to the fire. I just wanted to reiterate that we do serve everybody in all the communities in the county, and ours is a countywide application, so thank you.
Rick, also, questions, just are a couple points of emphasis.
Yes, sir.
The Fire Chiefs Association has done a really good job of trying to same brands for everything. You're serving the entire county. You know, when it comes to your breathing apparatuses, correct in saying that they are all the same brand, so they should be universal from fire department to department in case somebody is in need of one and you guys, maybe a different department has an extra one. Additionally, you guys are also looking to get the bare minimum cost, knowing that it's going to cost you more, correct? Where we're Type 6 engines, for example, you're asking for $190,000 for knowing full well once it's fully equipped, it's costing $230,000. So am I correct in saying that?
Correct. The breathing apparatus, we've gone with Scott SCBA brand. For example, Humboldt Bay runs them. One of the reasons we've gone through Scott is we can get on the CAL FIRE state spec package. If we were to buy just the pack itself, no bottle, no mask, no anything else, it's $10,000 individually. If we get on the state bid package where we can tag on for, it's probably about $7,000 now, we can get the tank, the bottle, and the harness, you know, and the mask for everybody. So we're actually getting a bigger value for less money for all the departments. As far as the Type 6 apparatus, 190 is a bare minimum bone stock truck. Since the last month, those have gone up to almost 200,000, and that's before you do radios, logos, any department customization. A company in Medford that builds these has one that a company department backed out on, so it's already built, it's ready to go. They have it on sale for $260 on sale. So there is cost share to these departments, so it's not like here's a brand new truck, go knock yourself out. They have to kick money in, so there is some ownership on that, if that answered your question. Yeah, sure.
Great. Thank you for being here. As far as, obviously, there's only 1.3 million, I think. Is that what the total is that we have to, and there's a lot of applications. And the fire district has done a very, very good job with basically spending what's been provided, you know, through Measure Z. So if let's say the fire service isn't the top ranked and 3 or 4 others are ranked higher, and there may be just 750,000 or so available, you guys can spend that 750,000 no problem and triage it as opposed to, you know, getting the close to 1 million. And you guys will take whatever is provided to you and spend it how you guys prioritize it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
We could spend, when Measure Z, as you remember, first came out, we lobbied for it. We were told, you know, 20% roughly. It's like, okay, we could spend $4 million a year easily and get people up to OSHA standards, which we're not even close to now, will not be. This is just bare minimum getting by. But when we were cut several years ago down to bare bones minimum, nobody got any equipment. It paid for dispatch, it paid for planning. A lot of us are in the planning mode to take on annexations, big areas that we normally go to out of the goodness of our heart. A lot of us are looking at raising our assessments to get up to a better standard so we can cover our costs more. So there is a lot of that going on in the back side of it, so you just don't see it. So the big thing is there's no personnel costs, there never have been personnel costs, and it's all put together by volunteer hours. So
Well, we sure appreciate you. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, sir.
Last thing before I let you go.
Yes.
All purchases are done through county purchasing, correct? So one issue of transparency that we tend to have with some of our reports, that will never be an issue when it comes to the Fire Chiefs Association because it is all logged. Every purchase is made log, correct? So we have a great audit trail of all the money you spent.
Correct. I can't get Sean to write us a check for $1 million and let us spend it. So it all has to be bid out 3 sources, or if it's sole source like the Scott SCBA, we have to make a case to county purchasing why it's sole source. In this case, there's a huge, tremendous savings. Same with radios. There's only so many manufacturers of radios, so we go with the cheaper brand, but it communicates with the expensive ones. But yes, everything has to go through purchasing. There is an MOU in place with the county every year. Sean and I get tired of talking to each other back and forth and emailing back and forth because we all know my computer skills are minimal. So, but yes, everything does go through the county.
Thank you. I'd like just to have a couple of comments outside of that.
One more for you, Rick. I know you're going to hate me for keeping you up there. It's the last thing you want to do. So
That's all right.
Can you reiterate how many fire departments are represented or eligible for the Humboldt County Measure Z one first? And then second is throughout the regional program that we switched to last year, if we are cut to a lower Measure Z allocation, how would the Chiefs Association break that down regionally and who would get cut?
You know, one region might take a bigger hit than another. We'd have to sit there and talk about it. What I would ask you to do is you see our budget, how we broke it out regionally. If you're asking us, I'll use the sheriff's number to take, say, 750,000, where would the sheriff cut us at 250? You know, what does he think is not important to fund us? So I'm looking at Ms. Long, you know, if she thinks, you know, SCBA is not important, would she cut that? So if you're asking us to make those decisions, I would like some feedback where you think this money is not necessary, or this request is not necessary, because it's real easy to say, Sheriff, I'll pick on you because you brought it up, you know, hey, there's only $750,000 available, do with it what you want. I would say respectfully, what are your ideas, what should we cut, and what should we tell these other departments why they're not getting it? So, does that answer your question? Again, it's 40-some departments. I think it's 41 right now. We also represent Arcata, Humboldt Bay, and CAL FIRE has a presence, but CAL FIRE has not received any Measure Z funding from the county, except for dispatch, since they pay the dispatch, but they bill through the county.
Yeah, I just want to, I appreciate that explanation. And the reason why I bring it up is because, you know, one of these applications can be partially funded.
Absolutely.
Whoever's on that bubble, you know, likely will be partially funded. So if that's the Fire Chiefs Association, then we just want to know, you're able to make that determination of what is going to be funded or not.
True.
Because
Yes.
if this committee votes 4 others, you know, or 5 others, whatever, above you, you know, then there's going to be a limited pot, you know.
Correct.
As far as, so that's why I bring it up. It's not like an all or nothing kind of a thing. If $750,000 left over, you're going to have no problem spending that money.
That we could spend $4 million, no problem, every
Yes.
year. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, and as president too, one of the things I've noticed in your packet is, in no disrespect to Mr. Brownfield, he has a thankless job. I mean, all of you up here have a thankless job. We know the court's overworked, but one of the main things the committee has put forth to the supervisors was no more county-funded positions. So this is another county-funded position that he's requesting. Like I said, no disrespect. I mean, it's a necessary job. All these applications are necessary. But if you fund this every year, what are you going to cut it from? Are you going to cut it from the school resource officer, the fire chiefs, or are you going to take a portion from the sheriff's budget, you know, all the county departments? So I would say strongly look at that. That's kind of my job as the president of the county chiefs, is to bring that up. So your committee has made that determination, no more county positions, because it hurts the budget or the allotments. So here we are looking at another county position. So, but like I said, I respect it. I mean, I don't understand how they work that caseload. It's got to be, you know, I could never do it. They have a thankless job and an underappreciated job, and I do not envy the position this committee is in.
Also, I think, you know, we've had the discussion before, just to comment on this topic about multiple applications versus a single application. I do believe the Fire Chiefs Association gets a bad rap in the fact that they submit one application. 41 departments, 2 million, that's 48,000 a year. That's nothing. Look at all these other applications. There's only one application that has a smaller number than that right there. So I do think we need to put it into context. Yes, $1 million is a big number. Additionally, if you go on to Measure Z's website, the county website, frequently asked questions, one of the questions, how will Measure Z address my public safety needs? Right here in the bottom part of the paragraph says, also volunteer fire departments and firefighters play critical roles in protecting life, property here in Humboldt County. Additionally, additional resources will maintain rural fire and ambulance protection services, allowing our first responders to better and more safely protect county residents. The only other entity mentioned in here is the Sheriff's Department. So right here in our makeup of Measure Z, we directly reference the fire department. So I do think it's in our best interest to honor what this was for. The Fire Chiefs Association was very much one of those. So.
Okay, do we have any other comments? Any more on Zoom?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, I guess we are just about ready to get to the hardest part of this.
I do want to bring up one thing if I could, sorry. So I know we have a couple board of supervisors in the room here. The county budget's in a very, very difficult situation right now. They're facing a budget shortfall, and they have froze all of the county departments' budgets this year, and which makes it difficult, and we're not allowed to ask for additional general fund requests. So what that means is that our public defender and the rest of the departments don't have an option to go ask for another position from the general fund. So what we have to do is we have to ask this committee and go outside to try and get more money. And that's the reality. The reality is that I had 16 positions cut from my budget. And those 16 positions were for general fund positions. And now Measure Z is funding 16 positions that used to be funded from general fund. And I don't believe that's what really the Measure Z, fund was supposed to do, but that's the reality of what's happening here today. And I personally think, okay, this is my personal opinion, that Measure Z money should be spent all on county services until the county gets their budget in order. And because right now we're going to spend $3, $4, $5 million going outside the county, and we're going to tell our own county departments, cut your budgets, which is very difficult. We may have to lay off positions this year, but yet fund other positions through Measure Z outside our agencies. So it's a very difficult position to be in. So I may be a little bit passionate about this because my priority is public safety, and I agree. Fire and also law enforcement partners that really got this measure passed 10 years ago are the reasons why this is so successful. But yet, in the other turn is all those things that we promised that the deputies would do. Now we have to fall back and say, well, we can't do all those things because our general fund is short. It is difficult. Our board has a very difficult position back there, but that's the situation we're in this year. And so I just understand we're all fighting for it, but understand too that I wish we could fund every single one of these applications. The Wild Souls, Shannon, you guys are wonderful, and we need you. But unfortunately, it's not going to be my most highest priority, today, because the positions really do matter. And so that's where we are today. Sorry, I'm taking 2 seconds for that. Thank you.
Sue, you had something to say?
I had a question about the 400,000 that was brought up. We talked about it briefly last meeting. Do we have any update on that, or is there anything we can do? Can we roll that 400,000 in, or is that totally up to the supervisors?
That has to go through the supervisors.
Is that what that is?
And through the chair, item G2 on the agenda, so right after this ranking, we'll have a discussion about that. And the option will be...
We can make a recommendation on how we feel or where that part should go. But
So that's that item. Okay, thanks.
yeah, and we'll do that after our funding. That's one thing I was going to bring up, that there is a potential for a little bit more funding. So if you don't get funded today, there is a possibility of further funding after the Board of Supervisors meeting. This is very tough. I will bring up that I have been to every one of these meetings since the very first meeting. And I actually helped campaign for Measure, was it the first one? Was it Measure Z? Measure Z. And the whole reason that this was brought forward was because the Sheriff's Department didn't have enough officers for the rural areas. And their department was so low in that. And so all these other things were added in because a general tax is easier to pass than a specific tax. It takes less votes. And so that way, we could get those officers on the street. You were sheriff then, weren't you? No? Oh, okay. That's right, you were under sheriff. So that's the main reason that this did get brought. And I personally feel there's been a lot of things brought in that weren't really necessarily, they were kind of the other, thing added on, so this thing would get passed. But it is a county tax measure, and I didn't even know when I was campaigning that outside agencies were going to be able to get this. But I personally feel it should be for the most county, fire department serves the whole county. A lot of the positions and a lot of the things that we do serve more than just that one little area. They serve, part of the county. The school resource officer serves the whole southern part of the county. The drug task force officer serves the whole county. The sheriff's department is the whole county. That's just my personal opinion on this. This is very tough for us up here to make a recommendation, but it doesn't end with us. It does end, the final decision is with the Board of Supervisors. So, anybody else have any comments before we start?
I had a clarifying question for Sean. You brought up the reserve that this committee set aside. Was it last year, the year before? How does that play into what Sheriff Hansel was just talking about with the staff on the county side?
So the reserve account was adopted this year with a budget of $864,000. That was after a recommendation from this committee. The intent for that funding is to be used in case our revenues do not come in as projected. As we talked about last week, we projected $13 million even in revenue this year. Right now, we're looking at about $12.9 million. And so if that projection holds true, then that reserve would be there for that, not necessarily program expansion.
And that would be the Board of Supervisors that would vote on how to use that, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I just have one more comment after what you said, Tammy. Not disagreeing with what you said, but keeping in mind that every city is paying into this. And so some of the bigger cities are paying a lot into Measure Z. So when they have a request that's maybe 100,000 or less, they are paying more than that into the program. Just something to keep in our little brains as we try to figure this out.
Okay.
I do have to add, I want to throw in a comment.
Okay.
In looking at this situation we're in, and as we talk about county services versus municipal services versus emergency services, I'm reminded that I go back to the ordinance. I go back to what was written and passed by the voters. It required that much verbiage and inclusion because I feel that's what it was required to pass. I communicate with people in my district, and I communicate with as many people as possible to figure out what my priorities are going to be as I sit here. But it's the ordinance that I look to, not what was a projected intent, because that's how I interpret the will of the voters. And I have to express that.
Thank you. Any other comments before we start? None on Zoom? Okay.
All right, we'll be able to share the screen and we can go through some of our rankings. And just as a reminder, this is our annual process that will help this committee get down to its final recommendations. Your committee has traditionally used a ranking process where we go through each application and we ask each committee member to rank the application, whether it's their first priority, second priority, or third priority. And we've associated points with each of those. Number 1 priority gets 1 point, number 2 gets 2, and 3 gets 3. Lower your score, the better. And I've got a running tally over on the right that I'll bring out once the scoring is done. But if there are any ties, then we can talk about whether or not we want to go through a second round. But with that, whenever you'd like, Chair, we can start running through each individual project and go and rank them.
Okay.
All right. So we will start with application number 1. This is the City of Fortuna Police Department's School Resource Officer. And if this is a number one priority for you, would you please go ahead and raise your hand? And if it is a number two priority for you, will you please raise your hand? And number three. Thank you. For the City of Rio Dale Community Service Officer, if this is a number one priority for you, will you please raise your hand? This is a number two, please raise your hand. And number three. All right, so that was Talon at a number two. Thank you. For the Wild Souls Ranch First Responder Pilot Program, if this is a number one priority for you, will you please raise your hand? Number two, please raise your hand. And number three, please raise your hand. Thank you. City of Eureka Police Department Enhanced Safety Equipment application. If this is a number one priority for you, please raise your hand. Number two priority. And that is 9 of you. The Bear River Band of the Ronerville Rancheria. This is the OES staffing. This is the application that we voted on earlier to modify. If this is a number one priority for you, please raise your hand. Number two. And number three. Thank you. And on to the City of Trinidad's application. This is application number 6 for the water system equipment replacement. If this is a number one priority for you, please raise your hand. Number two. And number three. Thank you. On to application number 7. This is the Bear River Band of the Ronerville Rancheria dispatch services. Oh, I'm sorry. We're not going to do that one. Sorry about that, you guys. Just get going through sometimes. Application number 8, the Humboldt County Fire Chiefs Association. If this is number one priority for you, please raise your hand. Number two priority. And number 3. All right, and move past number 9. On to number 10, the Public Defender's application for an additional Deputy Public Defender. If this is a number one priority for you, please raise your hand. Number 2. And number 3. Thank you. And the last application is the rural response. This is a number one priority for you. Please raise your hand. Number 2. And number 3. Thank you. All right, if you give me just a second, I'll sort it out and we'll look to see where the ranking lands.
Sorry to interrupt. Did you not change the number from the conversation on the phone? Sean? Sorry. Were you not, I'm sorry, my eyes are so bad, but when we spoke on the phone, we changed the number? Oh, yeah.
If it's all right with the chair.
why am I so awkward? Okay. So when I called you on the phone the other day to ask to change the to remove the salary piece, I noticed that that was different.
No, that was not changed on here.
Okay. I'm just saying that I had requested that, but you had sent in the paperwork, so I didn't know if you were gonna send that back out.
Shannon, are you saying you asked for a reduction?
Yes.
Say that.
I asked for a reduction. It just keeps getting worse, you guys. Yeah. So originally in the application, I had the $60,000 for the salary, and I asked him to remove all of that. So I just wanted to share that, and I apologize.
So what did you want?
Yeah. I can't, my eyes, you guys. It was just 60,000 less than what was on there. Okay.
21,984 would be the remainder.
Would it be appropriate to take a motion on changing that application and re-rating it?
That's completely up to your committee.
Does the committee want to do that?
Would move to do that, considering the information.
I would second. I think we have to vote on legitimate info.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Chair, I didn't record that vote. It looked like there was a motion and a second, and I didn't see who was yes and no.
Okay, the people that were yes, raise your hand. People no, raise their hand.
Okay, so apologies about the confusion here, everybody. So that would mean that the rural response application is to be considered at 21,984.
Okay. So we take a due vote on that?
We can go back and re-vote on that.
Okay.
That's all right. Okay. So application number 11, if this is a number 1 priority for you, please raise your hand. This is a number 2 priority for you, please raise your hand. Number 3 priority, please raise your hand. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So thank you, Eric. Our ranking sheet would have us cut off right about here. You can see here, sorry, I can't get to my highlighter because we've got all kinds of stuff going on. So that would fund application number 4, Eureka Police, application number 1, City of Fortuna SRO, application number 2, City of Rio Dale CSO, and all but 39,000 of the Fire Chiefs Association application.
Okay.
And I will say, Chair, I know that there is a discussion to be had after this to ask to provide a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on what to do with the $419,000 in Public Works allocation. Knowing that there is that amount of money that is potentially up for your recommendation, I do see down the rankings, there is a tie between the OES staffing application numbers 5, 6, and 11, the OES staffing, Trinidad's water replacement, and the rural response application. So there could be, later down the road, there could be a question on what is a priority between those 3 applications. And so if you all wanted to do a second round of voting on those 3, that is something that could be a consideration for you all.
Does the committee want to do that? All in favor, raise your hand if you do. If you don't, raise your hand. So was there 5 that did? So I guess that means yes.
Okay, so we will go ahead and go through.
Sean, before we do that, that's still, even once we go through and re-rank these 3 items, we still have the ability to recommend that the Fire Chief Association receives their remaining $39,000 and change, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Okay,
Can
so.
you clarify which one? Yeah.
3
Yeah.
were again?
Yeah.
Okay. So we are talking only about 3 applications right now. We are ranking the Bear River application, application number 5.
Okay.
Application number 6, the City of Trinidad's water system replacement, and application number 11. So you are essentially ranking which of those 3 is your number 1, number 2, and number 3 priorities.
Okay.
You all want to take a second to maybe write a note?
Nope, go for it.
Okay. So we will start with the Bear River. If this is a number 1 priority for you between these 3, please raise your hand. If this is a number 2 priority, please raise your hand. And number 3, please raise your hand. Thank you. The City of Trinidad, if this application is a number 1 for you, please raise your hand. Number 2, and number 3. Thank you. And the rural response, if this is a number 1 for you, please raise your hand. Number 2, please raise your hand. And number 3, please raise your hand. Thank you. So that would put I've got to do a little resorting, but among those 3, that would put Bear River number 1, Rural Response number 2, and City of Trinidad number 3.
Also of note, my calculation there quickly is if we add the remaining 39 to Fire Chief Association and all 3 of those totals from requested, it's $386,000 and change. I believe that's roughly kind of close to what might be available for the Board of Supervisors to discuss. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right in the ballpark.
Where did the public defender fall in all of this?
The public defender is right behind the Fire Chiefs Association. So we would need an additional $206,000 to fund that project, if we're assuming that there's $1.3 million available.
Quick question. You said they're right behind the fire chiefs. They came in 4, so they would have been 5?
So I'm confused as to why we didn't vote on that one versus the other 3 that we just voted on. Oh, because we were breaking a tie. Gotcha. So public defenders above the ones we just did.
That's
the Bear River-
correct.
Okay.
That's
thank you.
correct.
Thank you. So they're really number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay.
Okay, so at this point, Chair, if there's no more discussion, then I would look for a motion to accept this ranking sheet as adopted, or as noted here, go out to public comment, and then approve this to go to the board.
Okay.
I move we accept this ranking sheet.
Second.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Or any opposed? No? Okay, passes.
Okay.
Okay, so, so now are we going to discuss a recommendation for the Board of Supervisors for that amount? Or did we just already do that?
I feel it's still up for discussion.
Okay.
heard any resolution
Additionally,
on
not
that
to
one.
pile on to you, Sean, are we going to recommend based on the full amount potentially available? Or do we have the discretion to stop at, say, 1.5?
So this item is, if Eric, would we be able to bring up the spreadsheet again? We talked about last week. We are looking at these two columns in colors here. Up for discussion right now is this $419,418. This is the amount of funding that is dedicated for the Public Works brush cutter crew. Right now, as it stands, this funding is allocated to Public Works for fiscal year 25-26. We know that Measure O has passed, and the intent is that this allocation would go over to Measure O. Hasn't happened yet. That action hasn't happened yet. The board hasn't adopted the budget yet. What is up for discussion right now is what does this committee think should be done with this amount of funding? Would your committee want that funding to stay within the county and potentially be redistributed among maybe these agencies here? Because as we talked about last week, the salary costs for the staff within those departments exceed the allocation that they're going to be receiving this year and next year. You can see that that amount is flat. Or does the committee want to recommend that this $419,000 go towards a discretionary part of the pie, or a mix thereof? So that is the discussion to have now. I've tried to get my spreadsheet to tally where our new line would be drawn if we had $1.7 million full. I should have set that up before this meeting, so I'm not sure if it'll calculate correctly, but we know, we can tell, kind of eyeball it, which projects would be funded if we granted additional funding to this discretionary process. Does that all make sense? Are there any questions? Happy to discuss any more if you like.
So, coming in off the top of this one, with, full respect to the situation that the county's in, and also with respect to the position that this committee has taken about how we want to see internal funding and external funding being available, it's my opinion that money should be split based on the percentages that we recommended to the board. I feel that roughly 70% of that should go to internal positions that are, or internal spending that are necessary that the county is struggling with at the moment, and about 30% be then deemed available for external allocation. And I think that reflects us acknowledging our own recommendations to the board and trying to follow those practices.
I was in Southern Humboldt. I helped campaign for Measure O. I went to a lot of the campaign events that we did for that. One of the big pushes that we campaigned for it was to see the Public Works money moved out of Measure Z, or moved out of the county side of Measure Z into the discretionary fund. I get what you were saying about the percentages and keeping those up, but if the total percentage was still off from the goal of 70-20, moving that fund over isn't going to help the total goal, correct, of that?
Yeah. So on the sheet we noted, if that entire allocation moved over to the discretionary side, depending on where the projects we eventually allocated, assuming that all of that funding went to outside agencies, then 75% of Measure Z in 25-26 would go to county agencies, and 25% would go to partner agencies.
Of that 400,000+ or just total?
Total.
Total. And the second part of that is, will the sheriff, other agencies have the ability to justify funds through Measure O, just like roads and transit, as it's written right now?
Right now, that is not the intent of Measure O. Measure O's intent is just for roads and transit.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments from?
Thank you. I appreciate the thoughts that were shared here today. I fully agree that that money should stay with the county. The 400,000 should stay with the county and balance out our shortfall within Measure Z. Since we're capped, we have to cut our Measure Z allocation and fund, and not fully fund the deputies that are assigned under Measure Z right now. So that 400,000 redistributed to the county agencies would help with that shortfall.
Do we know where that shortfall is as far as Measure Z?
I don't know exactly what the total shortfall is. I can give you kind of a projection, though. We originally projected that for Health and Human Services, there would be about a $72,000 shortfall. District Attorney, $106,000 shortfall. The Sheriff's Office, and this is without running updated salary projections, right? That would be about a $60,000 shortfall. No, I'm sorry, the Sheriff is $423,000 shortfall. Probation is about a $60,000 shortfall.
And would that reserve be in play for that, or was that for another year?
The reserve is supposed to be used only when our revenue doesn't come in.
Okay.
So this shortfall, does that mean positions? Are you losing deputies?
So if that question was for me, right now, we just got our projections for this year. So we're compiling our budget right now. And so this is a very sensitive issue, obviously. We don't want to discuss layoffs. But the board has given us a set amount of money, and we have to look at what we can afford with that set amount of money. And so this could offset. I mean, $400,000 is pretty much, we've taken out a lot of operating expenses. This is salaries that we're looking at. And so without reallocating or looking at other functions or pushing deputy sheriffs to other areas, we may be looking at layoffs if we don't receive the funding.
Sean, I have a question. Can you clarify the amount needed to fully fund the Fire Chiefs Association application?
$39,794.
I would make a motion that we recommend that amount of money be allocated or planned to fully fund that application, and the remainder of the money remain internal.
A comment on that, remaining internal then is going to be up to the Board of Supervisors where they choose to direct, correct?
Within the constructs of Measure Z, yes.
So we don't want to give them any guidance or any of our thoughts. I'm concerned about the public defender.
My intent is to address the shortfalls that the sheriff was referring to, not furthering applications down our list. I'm hoping to fully fund as many applications as we can, but my goal from this seat is to ensure fire protection throughout the county, and that's the intention of my motion. And I believe the remainder of the funds would stay within the county allocations that they have within Measure C that they're facing their funding problems, not the applications that we're putting forward.
I understand what you're saying, but isn't our job to give the Board of Supervisors some direction as to what we think is the most important?
Yes.
So if there's if you're doing 39,000 and there's another 380,000, shouldn't we give them our thoughts on what they should do with that, or do we just say our job is over and go home?
I'm saying my recommendation is that should go to the sheriff's positions, the county allocated positions that may be facing budget constraints or freezes that are under the Measure Z umbrella.
Then I think that should be part of your motion, because that makes more sense.
I'll make that part of my motion.
I'll second.
Do we have any public comment on this item? Okay.
Before we vote, if I just make a comment on that, I think it's just important to point out the conundrum we're in, right, given the budget constraints. Because in '23, this committee made the decision to not fund any new positions. Technically, the public defender would be a new position. Very much needed position. That's kind of the position. On the flip side, this committee also made the goal to try to get the percentages 75-25. So basically, regardless of what we do, we're not going to meet one of them. So I think at this point, adding a new position would then create a potential for an additional shortfall the following year. So then we're adding more deficit going into the next year. We're already having a hard time making up what we got. Let's not add more to the plate. So I agree with the motion, but I think that, we're striving to get to what we promised. We're not going to be able to do it this year, but I do think that we need to be mindful not to add more debt to the plate.
As of right now, the public defender's not funded, and it's not the recommendation of this committee to fund it. It'll be up to the Board of Supervisors if they want to dip in or reallocate that. So, I'm fairly confident that, unless something drastic happens, there's more revenue brought in, then it probably wouldn't happen. But I'm going to vote no on this because I just believe that full allocation of 419 should be spent within the county allocation. Again, 39,000 maybe feel like it's nothing. And I know it's everything to the fire chiefs, and it's no offense there, but, when we're looking at positions that we're going to have to cut within the county, 419,000, all of it's going to be necessary. And what's crazy about it, too, is that right now we're in the part of negotiations, labor negotiations. And so our employees are basically not going to be given a raise or really anything right now because of the budget situation that we're in. And so it's a very delicate position within the county right now. So people are facing higher insurance costs, so they're making less money in their paycheck, and they may be actually working with less personnel this next year based upon the budget outlook. So I just urge this committee to vote no on this, and to give all that money to the county.
Okay.
Chair, I apologize to this committee. Looking over at the rankings, and there is a tie between Rio Dell and the Fire Chiefs Association. So if your committee wants to take that item up and rank between those two applications, that could have an impact on where the funding shortfall lands and which agency is affected.
Okay.
We're going to table this motion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just to confirm, Sean, will that affect total funding? The fire chiefs get totally funded, or just swaps that? The 38,000?
Yeah, so one of these agencies is going to be about $39,000 short.
Okay.
All right, so we are right now considering applications number 2 and application number 8. I'm going to ask you to rank between those two applications. Which one is your number 1 priority? Which one's your number 2 priority?
Before we get there, can I ask Chief any a question? I believe there's a portion in there that is for benefits, correct? Not for immediate services? Is that, if I recall?
Yes, that is correct. The CSO benefits totals essentially 56,000 and some change. I'm sorry, 46,000 and some change.
Okay, and I'm assuming those benefits don't come due in the next fiscal year, right? They're looking down the road for those benefits, or is that the health insurance cost for that employee for the year?
That's the health insurance cost for that employee for that year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so between application number 2 and application number 8, if application number 2, the City of Rio Dell Police Department, is your number 1 priority, please raise your hand. And if it is your number 2 priority, please raise your hand. You can get a 4. Thank you. And the Police Chiefs Association, if that's your number 1 priority, please raise your hand. Did I say police chiefs?
We know what you mean.
I'm hurting here. Okay, Fire Chiefs Association. If it's your number one priority, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Number 2 priority, please raise your hand. Our tie remains.
I think it's just, it goes to show the importance of how both of them are. You know, I understand the shortfall, you know, but I think it's important to realize the Riedel Police Department, they took a cut from their original application from what they asked for. The Fire Chiefs Association has items on their list that they're asking for funding for that they know they are not fully funded. They're going to have to come up with a way to pay for the remainder to get those things completely operational. So both are willing to, you know, make do as best they can. And I said, again, I think that that's important and imperative for that 39,000 that we're talking about with the motion that Nick made. I really think is the best step forward. No disrespect to the sheriff's office. We know we need them 100%. But I think when you're talking with this particular situation, when Fire Chief Association is asking for bare minimum, Riedel is asking for the bare minimum, that's got to hold some weight. And so I think that the original motion Nick made, because we could go back and forth here and keep tying if we want. I mean, I got nothing to do. But, you know, I think it's pretty obvious based on the vote that they're both equally important.
Or we can just split it between Riedel and the fire chiefs, 39,000 divided by 2. Just a thought.
Kind of point of process, though. I'm confused how we tied.
1s versus 2s, so there's this equal amount of 1s and 2s.
Yeah, but if we have a 9-person committee, okay.
Yeah.
I
It
didn't know
was
that
just a
an
function
option.
of the way we voted. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to hold to my, I'd like to hold to my initial motion of the remainder to fully forward our last recommended application.
So the motion was to recommend to the Board of Supervisors with that 419,000 to take 39,000 and change of it, put it over to the discretionary side, and then have the board reallocate the remainder within the county agencies that are short.
Correct.
And that was Chief Pape who seconded that. So motion and a second, and then public comment, I believe, Chair.
Okay, is there any public comment on that? None?
Thank you, Chair.
Any more comment among the? Okay, all in favor?
Would you please raise your hand if you're in favor?
So I guess motion passes.
No, I had 4.
That's,
Can you please raise your hand high
Oh,
if you are an
okay.
aye on this?
okay.
1, 2, 3,
All
4.
opposed?
Motion fails.
Motion fails. Okay. So then,
I will move that we move the 419,000 to the county allocations set forth in Measure Z to be distributed per the percentages.
okay, do we have a second?
Do we even know what that means?
It's, well, as Sean puts,
Percentages for what?
percentages of the allocations right now. We can't just, right now, everyone has different amounts that are in there. And so whatever that total amount is, that 75% or 73%, that should be, if whatever county department is receiving, what percentage of that 75%, they should receive that percentage of the 419,000. If that makes sense. So there's 5 departments that are receiving funding from Measure Z, correct? The sheriff's office is receiving the most of that. We're receiving the biggest percentage of the county allocation. And so that 419 should be distributed per that same breakdown.
So I think that's what I don't know what those 5 departments are that are receiving.
Okay, he had them up on, Sean, do you want to throw them up on the screen?
It's way too far away.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you. I couldn't see that. I still can't see that. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Billy.
You're welcome, thank you.
Okay, I'm stuck here. Where do,
Billy made a motion.
okay, we need a second. Somebody second that?
Second.
Okay, so all in favor of?
We got to go out to public,
Oh, sorry.
public comment.
Public comment on that?
Yeah, I'd just like it to be recognized that I also worked with Chief Pape in Southern Humboldt and amongst the chiefs to promote Measure O, and it was a tough one because taxes are hard right now. And a part of that was the explanation that this money could be available for emergency services under the Measure Z, and that this would open up some of that allocation. I just want to emphasize that there is some feeling in the community in Humboldt County that this is a continuous pattern, that the money then goes back to the county because the county's in trouble. And so I do think there's a chance that this could continue to erode the trust in how we sell taxes. And I just would like that to be considered.
Any other comments? I just don't even know how to vote on this. I mean, this is a tough situation. I personally would rather just send it to the supervisors and let them decide. But, yeah, okay. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Please raise your hands high so that I can see them. Thank you. 1, 2.
So,
And all opposed, please raise your hand. Motion fails.
so both of them failed. Okay, then it just goes to the supervisors and they decide?
If this committee, again,
We can make that recommendation, you can make
Yes.
that motion.
Well, the
Here,
bottom
Trent.
line is the board's, so
They'll,
they decide anyway. They
Yeah.
could completely undo what we just decided. So the bottom line is they decide anyway. So,
so Chair, if I may, the actions that this committee has taken so far is to approve the rankings as shown here. It shows that there is $39,000 that would be, it would be $39,000 short of funding these applications. There still remains the conflict of what to do with these two applications, the Rio Dell and the Fire Chiefs Association, because those are ranked the same. We did a round of voting, and we still.
And is that the bottom of the list?
Those are the bottom of the list of eligible funding. And there's still the issue of which, if there's any recommendation that this committee wants to provide to the Board of Supervisors on what to do with that funding, we've taken a couple motions. If your committee can also just choose to move on, and the allocations would remain the same as it is right now, with Public Works having that allocation. Remember, that is the way that the budget is set at this point, and it'll be a decision of the Board of Supervisors on what to do with that allocation.
these are still early projections, and we could have more revenue to end up, covering that 39,000 essentially. I mean, something could happen. By the time the board gets this decision, you're going to have a final allocation of what that bottom line is. Isn't that correct?
Our revenue projection for fiscal 25-26 is 13 million. It's not going to change. If anything, it'll go down. But right now, that was part of the calculation that we did to provide this committee with a revenue projection for 25-26. So that is where it's going to be set.
Historically, the projections have always been, I don't know. I've seen the projections come in and they're higher than, what the bottom line is, it's higher than what the projections were. I would just vote that we push it to the board as is, and they're going to end up making a decision based upon what the actual revenue is and what the allocations are, and it's going to be up to them to make this final decision of who gets funded in those final rankings.
Not that I would prefer to dip into reserves in year one. That's not really a great start. But if we're unable to make progress on that extra 39,000, again, I reiterate for the Fire Chiefs Association, they're asking for the bare minimum. One of the items on there is 40,000, washing machine. That's to wash all the gear to try to get all the chemicals that cause cancer to get out. Well, I think we forget that the fire department is who people call when things are really a problem, right? So it's a long-term, they have a long-term risk in life, not just coming home from a call. Additionally, if there's, unfortunately, if there's a high-speed chase and there's an accident, we need the jaws of life apparatus. Well, we cut that. We can't afford it. How are you going to get somebody out? Time is crucial in any type of emergency call. And so I really think when we come to that percentage, that 419, the original, one of the original things with Measure O was to remove that funds. I get that we're at a deficit. I understand that. If we do it based on the percentages, sheriff's office would get 32,000 of that 39,000, and then the other 4 would split $7,000. So really, the other 4, we're not getting anything, right? So it's the 32,000 that the sheriff's office needs. So I understand that they very well need it, and they need more than that. I get that. They're still going to get a large chunk of that in the money, which I think starting the beginning of this fiscal year wasn't planned on, right? A lot of things weren't planned on, but so they're going to get more there than was originally planned, I think, from my understanding. But if we are unable to come to some type of way, I'd like to see us complete basically 2 applications, because both Riedel, they clearly need 6 officers, 3,300 people, and a bunch of other, things. They also, go outside their jurisdiction. They need it. Fire department, they need it. When 2014, when Measure Z was on the ballot, most of the ads had the fire department in the ads, right? Again, on the county website, Measure Z, fire department's listed in there. So, and they do a great job of trying to, I sat down with a couple of chiefs going over a lot of stuff they're asking for. They're not even asking for full costs. They try to make sure all departments have all the same equipment, so that way it's interchangeable in case someone needs a tank or whatever it may be. They are very aware that funds are limited. They're only going to continue to probably become more limited given the financial constraints that we're under. The other part that is difficult with this is that some of these items, breathing apparatuses, right around a year minimum just about to receive some of those. So if something happens and we need more, we got to wait, right? So I do think that I understand no one thinks, oh, we don't have, this many fire calls or whatever, but until you need it, then everybody's clamoring for it, right? We don't want to be in a situation that happened, to our friends in Southern California where all of a sudden things are out of control. I don't think people realize how close we're one wind shift away from the August Complex fire becoming a really big issue. And so, yeah, we might not see them on the day-to-day, but, again, also, which they brought up, 2023 and basically 23, 21, 20, right about 4 million, a little over 4 million in volunteer hours that they don't get paid for. Filling out these applications, doing all that, they're not getting paid to do that. So that 39,000 when they're asking for bare minimum, I think is more than deserved.
I hear you. And that's you're addressing a very specific application, and I support it. But on where we're at right now, I feel it's the job of this committee to make recommendations. That's what we do. We don't make decisions about how this is actually going to end up happening. But I feel that we need to make a recommendation on this. I feel to not is to ignore what our job is.
Just to confirm, Sean, if for example, they're going to lay off sheriff's deputies, could the Board of Supervisors tap into that reserve right now? Or would they need the authority of this committee, which there really isn't?
No, it would require, I think it would require a 4/5 vote of the board because it's technically a contingency account.
Yeah.
But yeah, as general fund money, it's certainly available to the board.
Thank you.
Okay, so did you make a motion? Was there a new motion? Okay, can you repeat that?
I think I made a motion just to push the current list as is to the Board of Supervisors with the current recommendations.
Okay. Do we have a second on that motion? Do we have any public comment? Okay, so all,
I guess one point of clarification, as is, Sean referenced, we haven't actually decided Riedel versus the fire chiefs. Yeah, so technically, we don't actually have it in order. So we don't know as is who is going to be short. So I think we do need to figure that out, correct? No?
well, that we, as is means it goes as is. and
Okay,
that
as
they're
in tied,
gonna
and then
make
they
the
decide
decision.
what they want to do with? All right, no problem.
Okay, so all in favor of that motion? Okay, motion passes.
And all who are opposed.
Oh.
There was,
Okay.
okay.
Okay, so is that it?
That is all that we had on the agenda for today. I know that when we come back in the fall after this, I know that this committee was interested in weighing in on what the next version of our 3-year spending plan is going to look like. As you all know, the 3-year spending plan ends at the end of fiscal year 26-27. We're still a ways away, but it's never too early to begin planning because we can start to project out now. But for everything else for fiscal year 25-26, I believe that is it for this committee.
Okay, thank you very much, committee. This was very tough this year, but thank you, everybody, for your time and all your work. Meeting adjourned.